All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. This is DAO Talk, your one-stop shop for everything DAOs. This is DAO Talk Weekly, episode 26, and we are joined once again by your favorite internet penguin, 0x Frisson. Welcome back to the show, my friend.
Guess who's back? Guess who's back? Guess who's back? Da-na-na. What up, everyone? It's good to be back. I was out on parental leave. I biddled a baby. Actually, I didn't do that much, but I was there. I was in the mix, kind of. My wife biddled a baby. Super excited. Glad to be a dad. Glad to be back. Glad FTX is gone. Hate them, but sorry if you lost money though, for real. But yeah, we're cleaning out the trash and continuing to build. So let's go.
It's been a long winter without Frisson. If you've been listening without him, thank you. It's not the same without our favorite co-host, but we're glad to have you back. A lot has happened in the meantime. I'm sure if you've been listening, almost every episode we've mentioned Frisson in some sense, especially with the whole SBF and FTX debacle. I think Frisson, in my opinion, was the number one anti-SBF guy. And if we would have listened to him early on, we could have saved a lot of pain, but we didn't. We'll start off with a banger of a tweet from our friend, hopefully soon DAO Talk guest, Vitalik. The notion of governance rights, in air quotes, as a narrative for why a token should be valuable is pathological. You're literally saying, I'm buying X coin because later on someone might buy it for me and a bunch of other people to twist the protocol toward their special interest. And he follows it up. As a regular individual, pay $500 to get 0.0001% chance to influence the outcome of some votes is just not a good trade. The only people for whom it is a good trade are multimillionaires and hedge funds, including attackers. We've talked about, this idea as a whole a lot over the past 20 some episodes. Nothing new under the sun here, but it's crazy that it's still not crazy. It's still a conversation, and I think it shows just how hard it is to move forward from the one token, one vote governance. Not one token, one vote, but having a weighted governance tokens model.
Yeah, for sure. I think that this is a good articulation of the bear case for governance tokens. I think of this, Frisson's Lil Frisson has been minted and is crying, but yeah, I think this is the bear case, right? I think of this as the valuation floor for governance tokens is basically let's just use nouns as an example. Let's say you're just super bearish on nouns, governance rights as it relates to the NFT, what one noun, one vote kind of confers from a governance perspective. You can think of the ETH treasury. Nouns is a good example because they only have ETH in their treasury. So there's kind of this very clean way to value the treasury. You could think of the ETH treasury minus some kind of discount around how hard it would be to sort of steal and launder as the valuation floor for nouns. So basically what is the value of getting enough nouns votes to basically steal the ETH treasury as kind of one way to value nouns. And that's kind of what Vitalik is saying is if you put value on governance tokens, that's kind of the valuation framework that you're using. And that's really bad, and also bad for smaller people because they'll never have enough money to ever be able to put value on something like that. And I think I think that it's a valuable point. I do think though it's overly negative and also somewhat naive. So you'll see DC Investor jumps in here, and there's a bunch of other people that jump into the thread with this point. This assumes that we'll never be able to, use governance power and use protocols to direct cash flows back to holders. And that's like, if you think about governance tokens as like an analogy to equity in the TradFi world, the reason that people value equity in companies is that they that it comes with like legal guarantees to future cash flows of the company. And I think there's absolutely like a possibility and maybe even probability that we are able to get to that place with governance tokens. There's some significant barriers, the most notable one being that it's hard to avoid having your token be a security under US securities law if you're directing cash flows from the project back to the token. So there's some like legal work that needs to be done. So we're like not there yet, but I think this is like, yeah, definitely like takes an overly dim view of governance tokens. There's also the possibility that the governance token can come with like other utility beyond just governance rights. I think nouns are a good example of that, right? Like it comes with, creative license over your nouns, and kind of like the art side of things as well. So I think there's a few ways this is kind of like overly harsh, but I think it's a good conversation to be having for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Tweet from you, Frisson. One of your first tweets back into the arena that is Twitter. DAO Treasury Management, a short story. Don't take unnecessary risk with the Treasury. 2, understand where the yield comes from. It's probably not risk-free. 3, don't have a trusted third party do it. 4, don't start with half your goddamn Treasury. Frisson, I think I know, but what sparked, this very fire tweet?
Yeah. So we're going to talk in a second about like a major treasury management kind of DAO vote governance proposal decision that was made and kind of like what some of the challenges are with that decision. But I think this applies to like really any DAO. So treasury management is a hot topic right now. It's a very important topic. So a lot of DAOs, like let's use the Uniswap DAO as an example, they only have the entire treasury is valued in their own token, which currently doesn't have any fundamental value accrual beyond governance rights per Vitalik's last tweet. And so there's like a pretty strong case for a DAO like Uniswap to do something else with their treasury. Maybe they should like diversify into ETH or stablecoins. Maybe they should like provide some liquidity of their own token so they can accrue some of the fees that are being generated from trading the Uni token back to the DAO, et cetera, et cetera. So it's like an important topic. But it's also something that should be like approached from a very thoughtful perspective. There's a couple of things to think about. Like one is kind of the process of like how you approach doing treasury management in a decentralized way, which we're gonna like talk more about in a sec. But the other is more just like thinking about financial management and risk management and like how to approach things. So for most of these DAOs, the treasury is like their only way to continue funding the project. So it's really existential to potentially lose access to that funding. And so if you're thinking about doing some treasury management, like the number one priority should be minimizing risk, because the downside is infinite. Like if you think about this from an expected value perspective, let's say you make some smart investment decisions with your treasury. Maybe there's, some level of upside in terms of like improving sustainability of the DAO. But if you make mistakes with your treasury management decisions, as we've seen in crypto, those mistakes can often lead to things going to zero very quickly. So there's sort of infinite downside. And so like you're kind of walking into an inherently negative EV situation to start with if you're going to be doing something with your DAO funds. And so you just like really need to think about how to sort of like take the probability of that zeroing event down as close to zero as humanly possible. And that comes with thinking about smart contract risks, but it also has a lot to do with like who's doing the treasury management. Ultimately, like in order to make smart investment decisions, like it needs to sort of be like delegated to like a person or a firm. You can't like have an entire DAO be voting on like treasury management decisions, and expect good results. And so like that gets super risky super fast, right? Because in DAOs, like there's no when companies or financial organizations in TradFi, when they sort of like outsource treasury management, or they outsource like risk management to other firms, they have legal recourse if the firm rugs them. But in DAOs, you really don't have that legal recourse. And so if you delegate it to them in a way that's not trustless, you're getting the worst of both worlds, where you have no legal recourse from TradFi land, and you're not getting any of the like cryptographic trustless guarantees. So like you got to be really careful, and like definitely don't start with a ton of your treasury. And so that's what this take kind of is about. And something that I think we're going to see DAOs make some mistakes here, right? Before they learn harsh lessons. So hopefully something to think about if you're thinking about a DAO treasury going forward.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot and having a lot of conversations around just like funding in the DAO space and DAO tooling space in general. And just like, like there doesn't need to be, but like a path, like almost everything right now is like venture funded in a way. And I almost kind of think of some of these DAO treasuries that have been funded, with like, for instance, like with Nouns, or like, the way they fund their treasury, like it's almost venture like in a way. It's just a different.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's like community funded, but there's this like people are kind of upfront buying in with the expectation that there's like, future upside just in general for the DAO and for them personally, which like, I don't know if this is where you're going with this, but like startups usually don't like outsource their treasury management to a hedge fund. Right. I'm
kind of going that direction. I'm getting to this at the end of it. I'm mostly saying that just because I think a lot of people, and we can talk another time about why, but they're not placing enough emphasis. And I think this is why you tweeted this, Frisson, like on proper treasury management practices and really ensuring they're like, as much as they don't want to treat themselves as a startup or a traditional corporation, like there are some things and business practices in like terms of burn rate and making sure you're able to survive as long as possible. Like that, at the end of the day, that's what matters, right? You have to be able to be functioning, and you have to be able to like operate. And if you don't have a treasury, you can't fucking do that, right? So if you can limit as much risk as possible and not just make stupid mistakes, you're going to save a lot of hurt down the line. So like when you were gone, we interviewed Nick from Gauntlet, who they just spun out a treasury management tool, which is completely autonomous. It's like the first autonomous treasury management tool for DAOs. I would highly recommend anyone who's listening to this and thinking, oh shit, like maybe we need to put better practices around our treasury management shit if we can't trust ourselves, to go check them out. And also just like, I think a lot of people in the space, whether it's because they're engineers and don't have a business background, or just because they just don't have much background at all because they're either really young and they don't understand how business works, come in and they treat it like a casino when they shouldn't be, because you end up with nothing in your treasury and then game over. So yeah, thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a skill and experience sort of like Venn diagram intersection of like deeply understands where risk comes from in crypto and has experience doing financial management for a technology organization, that the intersection of that diagram is like extremely small right now. And so I think, much like crypto, we're going to sort of like reinvent it and learn the hard lessons, along the way, as we've seen in other spaces of crypto, which is okay. But hopefully we can avoid, some of those challenges as much as possible, especially for like some of the more kind of important foundational projects in the space.
Yeah, I think it's also an opportunity to like that Venn diagram is small, but you can expand it if you take the time to like broaden your skill set. And I think this is a really good way to do it, because it's like, if you don't do it, it fails. So like you're getting a lot of real world experience. I think whether like the space survives or not, regardless, like take that out of it. As an individual, you're making like like everyone in this space is kind of making an asymmetric bet, right? Like if everything just died and went to zero today, right? Like, yeah, we're immediately going to be out of jobs, but we also have gained a lot of, real world experience, whether it be business, engineering, coding, soft skills that is going to be very valuable to other industries in general.
I'm actually glad you brought up this like asymmetric bet. One of the things that I think is really important to think about with DAO treasury management specifically is like, it's not about eliminating any risk of like zeroing the portfolio. It's about understanding what risks you're taking. So I'll just use an example. Like, let's use Uniswap again. Let's say they decided to swap out half of their uni for ETH. Okay. And that's like their treasury management decision is like diversifying into ETH. Like, I think like you have to understand sort of like the risks of that. There's a couple pieces. One is just like volatility. Like assume, using historical performance of like uni and ETH, you're basically like changing the dynamic of like what the value of the treasury is over time, because now you're exposed to like the price movement of ETH as well. But I think from the perspective of like taking the portfolio to zero, I think there's a pretty strong argument that you like haven't really increased the odds of that at all. And the reason I say that is if ETH goes to zero, there is a 99.99% chance that uni is also going to zero. And so like you really haven't increased the surface area of the risk of like zeroing the treasury. You've changed sort of like what the volatility looks like for the treasury, but this risk of like taking things to zero in crypto, which is like should be sort of everyone's number one focus at all times, kind of like avoiding that, whether you're an individual investor or a DAO treasury, it's just not. It hasn't really changed, right? If you're diversifying half your treasury into ETH, if you're Uniswap, where you're basically like wholly dependent on Ethereum as it is, like if ETH goes to zero, that means Ethereum's dead because ETH is gas token, blah blah blah, right? Whereas like if you examine a different decision, which would be like taking half of uni and swapping it into USDC, a stablecoin, maybe part of it is similar because Uniswap is still quite dependent on USDC as a stablecoin. So maybe I'll use a different example. Let's say you swap it into DAI, right? There you're kind of onboarding some different risks around like the stability of the maker protocol. You're still dependent on USDC because DAI is sort of 50+% backed by USDC, but you're also dependent on like the maker governance process. You're dependent on like the utility of DAI continuing to be strong going forward. You're depending on like the real world assets that back makers. Still probably not like one of the riskiest things you can do because maker's sort of one of the more well-established protocols in crypto, but it's just like a different set of risks, right? So like that's like a really simple example. In reality, like a lot of these DAOs are exploring more complex things around like LPing and trying to generate yield from their assets, which like I'm not really qualified to like explain how to think about the risks of those like in an articulate way. But yeah, like I just like you kind of have to understand like what risks you're taking. And like if the additional risk you're taking is that crypto might go to zero, that is kind of an irrelevant risk to layer on, right? Because you're already taking that risk by existing as Uniswap in the first place, which I guess kind of relates back to your point about like where we're coming from as participants in the ecosystem broadly.
All right. Craziness out of ENS. Frisson, break it down real quick.
Yeah. So we were kind of alluding to this, with our conversation a second ago, but basically this is like a really interesting, controversial proposal within ENS to do treasury diversification and also to use like a third-party fund manager. And there's like, if you're a DAO person and you're interested in like DAO process as well as treasury management, you should really like read this whole thread. It's crazy. Like there's so many like heavy hitters in the DAO ecosystem weighing in, even people who aren't ENS delegates on like how to approach this. But there's really two things at play. There's this question of like treasury management, which we just discussed at length. And then there's also the question of like how, right? Like what are the implications of like, if we're delegating this treasury management to a third party, like how can the DAO still have sort of autonomous ability to like have authority over that going forward? So highly recommended resource for kind of DAO learning.
Absolutely. Go check that out. We're just kind of glossing over it, but it's arguably the biggest thing that happened this week, I would say, in the DAO space. So definitely go check that out. I'll link that in the show notes. Tweet from Kevin Owaki. Governance apathy is a big problem to solve in the next cycle. What would have to be true so that the median DAO citizen wants to vote? Something we think about a lot, especially as we're building Content Guild and just trying to get, more involvement. I think the biggest problem even now to solve is like coordination and getting people to just actually participate in the DAO itself. Top response from David Phelps, our good friend at Joke DAO. He says community participation, on-chain rewards, social, reputational, and yes, financial, gamified and embedded in Web 2 platforms. Only one project working on this, I think. I wonder who it is.
Yeah, I absolutely love that about Joke DAO is like that's kind of like how I think about Joke DAO is they're really just trying to tackle this problem head on of like how do you make governance worthwhile, fun, etc. Have upside for the average voter. So definitely would encourage y'all to like dive into Joke DAO if you want to look at a project that's really, really tackling this problem of governance apathy.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm sure in the future, we're going to be highlighting more people building solutions and just like contributors in general who are making waves in regards to fighting governance apathy. I think it's not wrong. It is the biggest problem that's going to be facing us in the future. And I think arguably it's one of, if not the top problem we're facing right now. All right. Seed Club. The word is out. Seed Club's 5th demo day is on December 16th at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. RSVP now. We love our friends at Seed Club. They'll be speaking at the On-Chain Summit as well. So if you're listening to this on Friday, which would be December 2nd, in 5 days, there's an On-Chain Summit that will feature the biggest players in the on-chain space, protocols building, on on-chain protocols, on-chain products. Seed Club will be speaking there. Seed Club is not necessarily themselves building on-chain, but they are funding and helping elevate the users and builders who are building products on chain. Really awesome stuff coming out of Seed Club. Frisson, you want to highlight anything on this?
Yeah, for sure. I think this demo day from Seed Club is going to be a great way to really tap into like who's still building, right? There's a lot of, despair in the crypto space. Like the FTX thing was like, we thought we were like, through all the drama, then it was like the worst one yet. Right. But like the reality is in many different corners of crypto and definitely in the DAO space, there's still like a hardcore group of people that are building. And that's what's going to kind of get us through to brighter days. And so I think there's going to be a lot of really exciting projects that show you what they built. Seed Club. So, great thing to learn what the newest stuff coming out is, and also just like give yourself some nice hopium, which speaking of hopium, we have plenty of that on deck at Tally as well. Tommy mentioned our on-chain summit, but also, more DAOs still coming onto Tally, right? This little corner of the world, like on-chain governance, is still happening. There's still a lot of high quality projects that are committed to the space and unaffected by just insane levels of like crypto, like CeFi bank grifting, right? Like in many ways, on-chain DAO governance is like the opposite of that world. And we're seeing, a lot of action. Defrag DAO launched on Tally this week. One thing to highlight here, like if you're a DAO and you're thinking about how can I become more trustless? How can I get the community involved directly through on-chain governance? Come talk to us, right? Like Defrag DAO mentioned on here, Denison and the Tally team really helped him out getting live on Tally. And so, we're happy to help you get live on Tally. We're happy to help you think about Open Zeppelin Governor. We're happy to help you just think about like how to design your DAO. What's the easy way to get started? Maybe you just want to get started with like Nosa Safe and groups. We can help you with that too. So just reach out. We're here for all the homies that are still building. So
Look at that participation rate. That's nice. 54%.
Where tasty. Are they? I haven't dug into this. They're moving liquidity to Arbitrum. Were they on Avalanche? There's so many projects moving from Avalanche to Arbitrum right now. It's crazy.
I think so. I'm not 100% sure, but I think so. Yeah.
Maybe they'll move their DAO to Arbitrum too. We need right now we're like live on Arbitrum, but there aren't any DAOs using us there just yet. So hopefully these folks will move their governance to Arbitrum as well, and they'll be the first Arbitrum DAO on Tally.
So yeah, speaking of Arbitrum, and we'll finish up with this, they'll be speaking at the On-Chain Summit. If you're watching, you can kind of look right here at some of the protocols presenting. The way it'll function is it'll start around 10 a.m. Eastern on Wednesday. It'll be completely online. If you are not registered and want to, get updated with the links when they go out, the link to register interest to attend is completely free. Will be in the show notes. But we got Otter Space, Badger Protocol, 0x Splits, Air Finance, HATS Protocol, DAO Research Collective will be presenting a lot of their research and analysis from the Stanford workshop that happened a few months back. C Club's presenting. There's a couple others, Disco, Reflexer, and then we have 2 panels. One panel is going to be about permissions in a permissionless world. So we're going to have some of the minds from Otter Space, Badger, Disco, who are building permissions protocols across chains. And then the last panel will be on-chain reputation, which is going to feature David Phelps from Jokta, who we mentioned earlier, or Aaron from Gnosis, Dennison, our one and only Dennison will be on there as well. And then possibly Aaron from Govern will be on there as well. So 2 amazing panels, which will happen in the afternoon. And then before that, we have quick 20-minute presentations around all of the, top on-chain protocols. And if you are not available on Wednesday, all of them will be recorded and uploaded to YouTube after the fact. So you can go watch them whenever you want, get updated on any of the topics. We have topics from treasury management, permissions to Seed Club, which is just kind of, funding different things around the space. So we got a little bit of something for everyone. Come for one, come for all of them. It's up to you. It's going to be a great time. Hope to see you there. Frisson, any closing thoughts on your return to DAO Talk? It's been a good episode. Glad to have you back.
Nah, On-Chain Summit in the house. Check it out.
Let's do it.
Good to be back. See you all in the streets.
Absolutely. Peace.